Or it doesn't even have, the question doesn't have to be even so specific. It can just simply be, why is Withnail and I such a funny film? Why is it such a great, why does it work as a comedy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very acidic.
Bugger.
Yeah, what have you been writing?
It's funny in spite of itself. So it's funny because it's so not funny as a film. Because it's just because of a sheer kind of awfulness of what's happened. You're on a journey with them into the absolute depths of hell. It ought to be terrible, but it kind of has a reverse effect. Everyone else can see that it's funny, but it doesn't recognise it itself, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That it's just a film I never really tire of. No matter what stage I am in my life, it's just always got that just endlessly playable quality.
Tell me about the performances in Withnail and I and who the actors are, etc.
So you have Richard E. Grant, of course, who these days is considered somewhat of a national treasure. But obviously in 1987 he was Withnail. Back in 87 he was unemployed, out of work, looking for his first big break, failing to find it. So I think there's a reason why it's considered his best performance, because it's probably his most explicitly autobiographical. You have Paul McGann as his the abbot to Withnail's Costello, the comparatively sensible character, the eye of the title, although he's also called Marwood, as you see in the credits. He's perennially anxious, very conscious of how dire his and Withnail's situation is. He loves Withnail, and he's clearly shared a lot of history with him, but he knows that Withnail is dragging him down, and he just has to escape him. The third one you have is Richard Griffiths. He plays the corpulent and lecherous Uncle Monty, who is actually based on the famed Italian director of Romeo and Juliet, Franco Zeffirelli. Monty's this very camp, flamboyant, sort of larger-than-life character, who provides a lot of more sort of high camp kind of humour, and he has some of the best lines in Withnail and I as well. I mean to have you, even if it must be burglary. So yeah.
Amazing.
Cool. Withnail and I is relentlessly bleak in tone, or at least it should be. Two unemployed, out-of-work actors are living in constant squalor. It's got such a mad and frenetic tone to it. The accidents and the constant fuck-ups happen at such breakneck speed that you just feel completely taken along from the ride, and you become blunted. It's almost got an anaesthetic quality. You become blunted to the sheer horror of the character's living conditions, that it just up becomes down, and what ought to be horrific in any real life situation becomes comedy gold. Another way it works in its comedies is the really jarring impact of merging these two radically different eras together. Namely, the generation that Withnail himself represents, and to a certain extent Monty represents as well. The very conservative, moneyed, aristocratic, dominated generation is coming up against the drug-infused, anarchic, anything-goes environment of the 1960s. For example, this sort of obsession with social status. So Withnail comes from a very aristocratic background. You can see it in his born to rule very entitled attitude, how he expects to sort of get away with everything scot-free. He gets arrested for driving under the influence, and he says, "Look here, my cousin's a QC. Look here, my cousin's a QC," as if that will somehow, lessen the severity of his offence, the consequences of his behaviour. And there's that instance where he lies to his uncle about Marwood going to Eton, and this sort of the very visible contrast between the urban squalor and seediness of London, with the sort of the well-to-do respectability of the Penrith and the Lake District and the Penrith tea rooms. So in addition to the kind of the best of the 60s soundtrack, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, King Curtis, etc., etc., you also have this kind of emphasis on sort of sexual liberation. You have homosexuality being discussed openly. You get the sense that a new Britain is emerging, is rearing its head, but the old guard, the old generation, is still refusing to be dislodged. It's just two worlds colliding in the most jarring and often hilarious fashion. The third reason why Withnail and I works so impeccably well as a comedy, it's a very physical comedy. It's a very surreal comedy. It's in many ways a bit of a slapstick comedy. You see this in many examples throughout, when the policeman in his very high-pitched voice says, "Get in the back of the van," that scene where Withnail is busted for trying to use a child's urine to pass his alcohol test. You see it in Withnail and Marwood desperately trying to disentangle themselves from what looks like a violent confrontation with an Irishman. Perfume punts. You see it all over the place. That kind of Chaplin-esque slapstick and that increasingly sort of surreal and wacky tinge sort of butt in to interrupt the relentlessly grim circumstances that the characters find themselves in. That, in 3 reasons, is why I think Withnail and I is such a memorable, such an enduring, such a unique comedy classic, and will hopefully remain so in 100 years from now. So yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment. I'm also thinking about